Welcome to part 5 of Understanding the Alps. I've explained about what makes a perfect day, what creates the valley winds, the dynamics of lee, and about partial and full lee sides so far. So by now hopefully you'll be familiar with these terms, and now we're going to look at how this affects us in the real world by using real pictures and some Google Earth images of the real terrain around here. So this first picture was taken from Arkansas. It's of the north end of the Zilla Valley. The valley wind in the Inntal flows from left to right of this Google Earth image. The rotor in this red area is a pretty good example of a partial lee, as the wind is not just coming over the top but around the side too. The next frame shows the soarable winds and luft side thermals on the east facing side of the valley. As the wind slushes into the Zillertal, it pushes up the northwest side of the Hamburg, bringing with it warm, buoyant air from the valley floor. The blue area here shows that it will be good potential for nice thermals, and as you can see that the wind then carries on up the valley towards the heat low to the south. This next picture is just above the Hamburg, which I talked about extensively in the last part. So here the 1,000-meter thick valley wind is portrayed, and if you look in the distance you'll see a star that says viewpoint B. Keep that location in mind as it will be featured soon. So as I described before, you can see the southwest face of the Hamburg is in extreme partial lee. This is probably one of the worst places to try and locate a thermal when the valley wind is strong. To put it like this, if you were flying in the UK with a 20-mile-an-hour wind, you wouldn't try to soar up in the lee at the end of the ridge that was into wind. So the same principle applies here. Moving on, the wind is pushing up the northwest faces of the Kapounce range and creating good thermals here. It's important though when gliding along this 10-kilometer ridge low down to try and avoid the sunnier southwest faces, as they would be also partial lee sides. Remember that wind beats sun. As you can see, the valley wind is blowing up the northeast side as well, and you'd expect to find weaker thermals here in the afternoon as the sun is already moved around. Further to the south there is a large change in direction in the valley. This north-facing ridge is called Heizenberg. It's extremely reliable for soaring, plus thermals moving across the valley floor are forced to trigger on this mountain. As there is a change in direction, there is a huge partial lee on the right side of the image, the Orphan, but a little more on that later. This next picture was taken from around 3,500 meters over the Ahornspitze. This is viewpoint B, the star I mentioned a few minutes ago. The previous images were from viewpoint A, the star above the Hamburg. This next section explains a little bit more about what's happening as the wind comes up the valley. The first area of partial lee is the Hamburg, and the red area with a strong twisting thermal coming up its southwest face. Moving to the blue area of the Kapounce ridge, there will be good thermals there. Then we have the next partial lee area. I won't go into too much detail here as it's pretty obvious what's happening, but as you can see the wind is coming around the side and over the top, so ingredients for a strong partial lee. This is also where two valleys meet, interestingly enough. This next image shows the partial lee side on the south face of the Orphan. Hopefully by now you'll see a pattern forming about these partial lee areas. And just to the left is an area that is more protected from the valley flow. This allows the source to form a strong but clean thermal when it finally triggers near the crest of the ridge. Again, it may be given a small twist as the air descends over the top of the Orphan. Okay, so this is what's happening on the south side of the Heizenberg ridge. On this shot, I'll try to explain that the strength of the wind determines how far downwind this rotor extends. The stronger the wind, the further it goes, obviously. One way this can affect pilots is that what sometimes appears to be an interwind face further downwind could still be in rotor and just mean sink and turbulence. Pilots will have to judge for themselves the wind strength and, depending on the topography, how big the tumble and therefore the sink will be in that area. If you just look to the left of the image, you'll see a star, viewpoint C. This is coming up in the next section. This photo is from viewpoint C and is looking south towards Meyerhofen. To the left is the reliable soaring face of the Heizenberg. The blue area on the right is pretty much the source of the house thermal on our main cross-country site, the Herrnstrasse. The next shot shows again that if the wind is strong, the rotor can extend far downwind of the obstacle. Around 25 kilometers an hour is enough to mess this area up pretty bad, and the only way to cross it is at altitude. This next frame shows the other good soarable faces if the wind is not too strong, or if it's free from obstacles upwind. If the wind is strong, then the one on the left is still in rotor produced by the Heizenberg ridge. If the wind is about 20 kilometers an hour, then all these faces should work quite well. This huge soarable face at the end of the Zillertal is the Ahorn ridge. This is our house mountain in the spring and summer for late afternoon, evening soaring and thermal training. There are many west-facing ridges that step progressively higher until pilots can attack the Ahorn spitz itself. I wrote an article in Skywings about this a while ago. So once you are high enough here, it's possible to jump onto the ridge behind later in the evening as the cold air comes from the glaciers and pushes the valley wind higher. It's possible to soar this wind up to about 2,800 meters as it slushes around this corner on its way to the heatlow just to the south. The last shot here is basically an overview of the local area around Meyerhofen, its soarable faces and the areas of rotor. The next series is going to be about route planning to try and crack the elusive 100 kilometers. Also coming soon, should we fear the Föhn?